Hi, today we're going to be talking about the Federal Reserve Part 2. In general, the Federal Reserve is made up of three conventional tools: the reserve requirement, the discount rate, and the open market. But for now, we're going to be focusing on the open market. So what are open market operations? It's the ability of the Fed to purchase or sell government securities in the form of T-bills. T-bills come in three forms: bills which are short-term, notes that are medium-term, and bonds that are long-term. It is also the major tool the federal government uses to control the supply of reserves. An example of an open market operation is lowering interest rates. When we lower interest rates, the federal government will purchase bank securities, and in exchange, banks will receive an increase in reserves. And we'll discuss this later in the video.
We have our product market, and this we already know as our neoclassical model, which is the intersection of both aggregate demand and aggregate supply. And we know that either one of these curves can shift in or out. However, in relation to the money market, we are primarily concerned with the movement of aggregate demand. So here we have aggregate supply. We are more concerned with either shifting demand out and lowering the interest rate, making it easier for consumers to get loans from banks. Or we can increase the interest rate, effectively decreasing aggregate demand and making it harder to get a loan. That being said, if we raise aggregate demand by lowering interest rates, despite what we see occurring in the product market, we will have the price of money, or let's draw that as price of money, will decrease because it is easier to get loans. Now when we shift aggregate demand curve down or decreasing it, the price of money increases because it's more difficult to get a loan. We have our money market. On the y-axis we have the interest rate, and on our x-axis we have our quantity of money. So we have our demand for money, or D7, and this is the supply of money is determined by the Fed. Now, this can either shift in, it can shift supply of money in, or it can shift out, effectively increasing the interest rate or decreasing the interest rate by changing the amount of reserves that are available to a bank.
Now here's an example of an open market purchase.
Now here we have we'll show the effect of a expansionary monetary policy on the money market, but we also know that expansionary monetary policy is the open market purchase. So, as we have here, we draw our money market. We have our supply for money, and we have our demand for money. So what happens is, for expansionary monetary policy and open market purchase, we are increasing the money supply. So we shift it here. As you can see, the effect of this open market purchase is we lower the interest rate, therefore making it easier to lend or decreasing the price of money. At the effect of expansionary monetary policy or an open market purchase on the product market. Well, we know the product market is just, if we look at our neoclassical model, it's just aggregate supply and aggregate demand at this equilibrium. But if we are practicing expansionary monetary policy, or we're making open market purchases, we are increasing C. Now, if we increase C, we're increasing our expenditure function, which is also known as aggregate demand. So that will shift here. However, the effect of this open market purchase is that we cause our equilibrium to shift up from this original equilibrium to this new equilibrium. As you can see, GDP increases, but our price level increases. This is known as inflation.
And here's an example of an open market sale.
The goal of contractionary monetary policy is you want to increase the interest rate. So if we draw our money market, we have our demand for money and our supply for money. So what the Fed will do, well, before I get ahead of myself, it's we have our initial equilibrium before we enact our policy. But if our goal is to increase the interest rate, well, as we know, the Fed will lower the amount of the money supply. So let's say our curve will shift up and in. The effect of this on the money market is the goal of contractionary monetary policy. You have your interest rate increasing. The effect of contractionary monetary policy or an open market sale on the product market. So what happens is, as I mentioned earlier, we lower C. And by lowering C, we lower our expenditure function, or we lower aggregate demand. As you can see on the graph, we lower it to this point. However, the effect of an open market sale is you cause GDP to drop. We know this as we cause seemingly more unemployment.
Now in this video, we'll discuss our inflation example that we spoke of earlier.
An example of wanting to lower the interest rate would be seen in an inflationary gap.